Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone. Want to take a moment to express gratitude to Monique and the team for the ways in which you all help us um, do so much digitally, but also in person. So thank you. And Monique and I are not at the Institute, but we are graced with the digital background of the Institute. This is somewhat of a teaser to invite those of you who haven't been here in person to come and join us at our meditation hall. The Institute is a retrofitted former monastery, so it's 70,000 square feet of beautiful, beautiful land that is here to support you all. Uh, my role in this conversation and in this series is always to moderate, to inquire. As a director of the fellowship program, my role is to create opportunities for our fellows and for the community to engage cutting edge ideas, voices in the field who are inviting us to think differently about contemplation, about social change, about social justice, and there's so much more. So today we have my colleague Kelly Boyce joining us. And before I turn to her and to our dialogue, I would love to take a moment just to tell you a little bit about the Garrison Institute fellowship program. The fellowship program began in 2020. We approached it with kind of thinking about it as a beta project. So we invited about 11 scholars and practitioners from different disciplines to spend 2 years just thinking about their work in relation to contemplation, science, research, and changing society for the better. And each fellow got the opportunity to just sit with their work in community at the Institute and just kind of take a moment to take stock of their work, get feedback. And at this point, we have two cohorts, 25 fellows total, neuroscientists, sound healers, psychologists, architects. And I'm just really proud to say that our fellows are changing the world and are impacting society in a major, 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 major level. I can speak to 25 different projects that are happening in the world. I'll just share one brief one that I think it's exciting. Um, and not to prioritize this one, but it's the one that comes to mind now. But Dr. Zara King, she's an anthropologist and neuroscientist. She's working on developing artificial intelligence to help heal collective trauma. I'll just I'll just drop the mic there for her. Thank you, Sarah. I can speak to other projects that are unfolding as well. So just deep bow to all the fellows, deep bow to the Garrison Institute for trusting and believing in the vision of the fellowship. I think our executive director Karen is here with us, so just wanted to acknowledge her as well with the visionary leadership that she's provided the institute across this year. I think she's here. Karen's here. So just a lot of love to you, Karen. Thank you for leading us during a great year of transition. Um, Many of you know that we're celebrating 20 years as an institute. 20 years. 20 years of holding space, of holding retreats, of designing programs that at the core try to curate and extend the wisdom bestowed to us by ancient wisdom traditions, but also marrying that with scientific inquiry. What is the intersection there of rich scientific inquiry with that spiritual contemplative work uh, that we've been gifted by so many spiritual um, and non-spiritual traditions. So just a kudos and a divine pat on the back to the Institute for getting us to this point, and and to you, Karen, and the executive leadership team for leading. Now, I'd love to turn to Sister Kelly. Sister Kelly, thank you so much for trusting me and for saying yes. Saying it was just a yes. It was a yes. Whatever, just when I invited you to be part of the dialogue, being part of the Garrison Institute Fellowship Forum series. So it's with great humility and gratitude that I welcome you to at least the digital walls at of the Institute. How are you? How are you showing up in this moment?
Yeah, well, I'm honored to be here, truly. So thank you. And really looking forward to this conversation, this dialogue. Um, well, in this moment, I was just thinking that the one time I have been to Garrison was probably, I think it's 4 or 5 years ago. And that was with the United Nations Foundation, and we were training the top 12 global psychologists for UNICEF in our
Mm,
Peace on Purpose program so that they could learn to teach it to their colleagues.
hmm.
And it was amazing to be in that space that is your digital background and to have a group like that. So that was my one experience with Garrison, and really delighted to be here. Curious, yeah, as always, to see what we uncover as we're in dialogue here.
Yeah. So allow me to share a little context and just have you just respond to the context to start our inquiry. And what we'll do is Kelly and I will talk just for about 20 minutes or so, and then I've invited Kelly to do a practice so that the community who are here and those who are watching can experience the power of the restorative and mindfulness practices that she has been able to learn and teach. Um, and then we'll open it up to the community for dialogue. Um, so, it's December 2023, and it's at the end of the year. I think the word frenzy is an adequate word for just December. Just December before the holiday season begins. Uh, I'm playfully thinking about the frenzy that occurs on Thanksgiving Day after the Black Friday. That shopping frenzy. I think that initiates symbolically the season of frenzy. But so yeah, December, just symbolizing this transition point towards a new year, closing out, the last quarter from a business cycle perspective, transitioning into the kind of the vernal equinox, the winter equinox, some of the planetary transition. But I think 2023 is a unique kind of moment with so much is happening in the world from a collective perspective. The ways in which artificial intelligence has overtaken the public imagination in terms of its advancement, its development. Literally, in November was Chat GPT's birthday. A year, and the kind of change and disruptive force that's one AI out of many has been able to do is just enormous. So on the one hand, the technological innovations that are causing um, are creating opportunities, but also causing concern. The reality that we live in a finite planet. Uh, we live in a finite planet, and um, regardless if you're a climate denier or not. Uh, the reality is that some of our summers are hotter. Some of our winters are in cases milder, or in some cases even colder because of the weather fluctuations. So there is something to the ways in which human activity has tilted the scale of our planet's ecological um, atmosphere, and just us tending to that, tending to climate change, tending to the realities that we need to really get uh, things in order for our future offspring and future generations to be able to enjoy the bounty of this planet. Um, I can say more about, especially in the US, the dizzying political uh, cycle, um, the polarizing politics that ranges from public discourse to, you know, family conversations. It's not just in the debate stage, but also like, you know, just connecting with friends and cousins and family that just have different points of view. Um, and how do we engage in civil discourse when we're operating from different worldviews and facts? Fact. And just to acknowledge just the geopolitical crises and wars in the Middle East, that flare up, you know, tensions that have been there for more than 1,000 years. Um, and lastly, back to technology, how the very technology that is providing us with access to this opportunity to talk together sometimes positions us in a kind of a holding space to see and on repeat, everything that I just laid out, and the ways that that shapes our nervous system, the way that that colors our sense of hope, the ways that it might even impact our mental health. In your work, and the importance of, slowing down and taking care of our bodies and finding rest. So just wanted to lay that foundation, broadly speaking, that is kind of like the seed bed for, what brought us to this conversation. What's coming up for you after hearing that?
Yeah, all that you mentioned is it feels like it's a backdrop in some way
Hmm.
to then our personal, interpersonal, larger collective experience.
Hmm.
And the exposure that we have, as you said, kind of on repeat, the cycle of that and the impact of that on our psyche, on our being, on our soul, individual and collective is real. And um, I know there are people, much more suited than I to speak on this, but to be able to really hold the truth and the reality of the uh, frenzied time, of the fragmentation, of the um, stress that's here, and to be able to also rest and take the rest that is there for us. It feels like a kind of an imperative for me, because yeah, otherwise we're just kind of sucked right into the cycle of that, and that becomes kind of like the foreground to our experience. And so for me, the need is real. The need is real for rest. And yeah, that's what's coming up as I hear you speak. And the need is real to acknowledge the suffering and to acknowledge what we're experiencing collectively, equally. The need
Hmm.
is real on both fronts.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate something you said that was subtle, but um, the rest that's there for us. I find that unique as a unique. Tell me a little bit about that in terms of what you're framing around their rest being there for us.
Mhm. It's available. It's like I think there's this way that we can feel like I think because of technology and some of these other just life stressors that we have, that rest is a luxury, or it's kind of the last thing we would think to do. We have all of our other maybe self-care things, whatever they are, including, mindlessly scrolling to entertain ourselves or whatever it is. And that the truth is that the rest is there for us um to kind of get a hold of and welcome into our experience, instead of that we're creating something out of nothing. It's already here. And it's just looking for the opportunities for it, and knowing and being really truly convinced of the need, I think, for it,
Mm.
and the impact of doing it, and how that really does affect our individual lives, our families, our the larger society. I'm just aware that there's such a strong need, and there's a case, and that when we see that, when we're able to really actually engage with the rest that's there for us in our lives currently as they are, then things start to change, because we're kind of like having more agency, I think, over an experience that feels out of control.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I'm just reflecting on some one of our conversations you had leading up to this, and one of the things that I remember adding to my notes was like, well, how do we slow down, um, uh, and how do we just slow down or rest, um, and then once we do slow down and once we do rest, then what do we do then? What do we do then? And I remember one of the things that you had mentioned that was a deep teaching, and when you said it to me, it was like, on the one hand, we want to find opportunities to slow down and give ourselves the rest that we need, in many cases that we deserve, um, and then and sometimes in that rest or in that slowing down, for some of us who even struggle to get it or to get there, there's some work that is required to learn what to do with that rest, and learning, what do you the exact words you use, what do you turn towards
Mhm.
once you so just wanted to invite you to say more about, on the one hand, how do we slow down, but also like what happens once we do give ourselves the space to rest, and like what happens there, what have you seen, and
Mhm.
yeah, anything that's coming to you in regards to that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think there are different ways to slow down, and what the culture that we're living in at large kind of has more of a sense of what mindfulness is. And then there's this, okay, I'm going to take, I teach this. So 5 mindful breaths, longer exhalation, relax my nervous system. Okay, back, all right, I rested for 20 seconds. What's next? And or I did the thing that I think that I should do. I pulled up this app and listened to this thing. Okay, now what? And the truth is, I think, well, for me anyways, and I can say for the people that I work with too, the invitation is there for a totally different form of rest that isn't this kind of like commodified rest where we're just taking this thing that we think is good for us so that we can be a better version of this kind of like self we haven't questioned yet. And And that's fine, regulate one's nervous system in brief chunks. These are things that I teach that are really powerful and useful. Um, and I think if we can look at rest, like where am I coming from in my desire to slow down? And what have I been running from that I haven't slowed down, and what might I turn toward when I do slow down? What might I encounter? If I'm not looking at this scary feed in my on my social media, what feed am I seeing, internally? And so I think some of the how to is really different for everyone, but I think that the one of the primary ways is to downregulate slash upregulate, if you're in malaise or depression, your nervous system. And when you're able to, have tools such as non-sleep deep rest that I teach, or other tools that are going to just directly engage your nervous system in an immediate way, so that again, it's this agency thing. You're able to know that when you take this moment of rest, you downregulate your nervous system, that it's not just then so that you can sort of bounce back into your life and go kill it out there. That's fine for people to do, but I think that what is there is much richer in the silence and the stillness and the space that is there for us when we do slow down, balance our nervous system, and then kind of open our eyes to what do we see and know, and what's at that horizontal edge of what we have yet to see, whether it's from our psyche, whether it's an interpersonal thing, whether it's spiritual, something very core about who I am, that now that I've, you could say, rested or slowed down, I'm now able to start being in this sort of more liminal space where things aren't as cut and dry as they're presented to us, or that we present ourselves to the world in. And then we have this opportunity to then, and I think it's really dependent on the person, but to turn toward what's there for us. And I don't pretend to know what that is for each person, but I do know it kind of falls into chunks of things.
Mhm.
um, but what is it that's there when we do slow down? I was having dinner with friends last night and saying that my grandfather was a mechanic, and
Mm.
my grandparents had like a porch swing, and my parents had in Ohio as well a porch swing, and my father worked on the printing presses for years, and so I grew up with this sense of rest is part of life. Like, you're just swinging on the porch swing, looking at the rain falling and listening to the thunder. This is an experience that you're having that's deeply rich, that allows your mind to wander in ways, and for you to learn things and know things about the world that you can't know when you're obsessively kind of, everything has been commodified.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I think the how is finding those ways for oneself that do slow you down and help get you into a place of what you would define as rest. And then what to turn toward is, it's a very alive thing. It's like, I think we've lost in some ways, and I'll speak for myself too, that ability to be truly in the present moment, just not just to be mindful, but to actually see what's there at the edge of our own understanding, at the edge of what's possible, at the edge of where we're hurting, and to then have the capacity and resource to turn toward that only can happen when you're rested. Everybody knows you have a bad night's sleep, and the next day looks a lot different than it had when you had a good night's sleep. So that's an easy
Mm.
way to kind of understand. It's like when we rest, we gain resilience just through the rest.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so much of this work and this conversation is a reminder, right? I mean, we know that rest is important, uh, and many of us know we need, to find reprieve, relief, Um, so these conversations are just good, gentle reminders of the importance of rest and to slow down. And wanted to just kind of one last question before I kind of invite us to engage another part of this dialogue, and that's to go a little deeper on the practice, especially the yoga nidra that you teach. Would love to kind of get in there a little bit in terms of that particular
Mhm.
practice for the community to learn more about,
Yeah.
in terms of the one that you've been teaching a lot around.
Yeah, sure. So yoga nidra is, I taught it as yoga nidra for years and people just won't come because they're like, what is that? Do I have to hold my foot behind my head? Like, what does nidra even mean? Well, it means sleep is one translation, and it's kind of like yogic sleep. It's that shavasana pose at the end when you're lying down, if you've ever done a yoga class, and there's a meditation. And there's a whole philosophy behind it. And there's also a whole system of thinking for, how to guide one in this kind of relaxation, which is a bit of a misnomer, but relaxation practice. Because sometimes when you do yoga nidra, you get anything but relaxed because you encounter your mind and your body as it actually is, um, as we know from meditation. But the yoga nidra practice typically has kind of an initial section where you're just setting an intention for the practice, which is a little different from a mindfulness practice where you kind of like plop down, follow your breath, or do attention training or whatever you're using mindfulness for, compassion practice. And this says, like, what am I here for? And I think it really helps us develop the intentionality to even do the practice. Um, because when you set the intention at the beginning and you circle back at the end, you see how it impacted you. And there's that feedback loop that helps you come back to it because you know in your being that this is helping you if indeed it has. And then you go into kind of this body sensing where, many of us are familiar with this, but this is a systematic rotation of attention through the body, where you're kind of taking your mind on a walk through the body, sometimes mapped together with the breath. So that, and these are all intentional to help place you in a state that is starting to become more relaxed, more regulated in your nervous system, like more present. And often people will fall asleep like right away because we are sleep deprived and we need sleep,
Mhm.
and that's fine too. So I think that my colleagues that teach yoga nidra, we often talk about how the practice is so cool because you can fall asleep the entire thing and have immense benefit, and I use it for that at times. And you can be awake for the entire thing and have immense benefit because you've actually discovered something about yourself, and so you can't go wrong with it unless you're not listening and you're also not letting go. Then it's just like having the TV on in the background, and it's kind of pointless in my in my opinion.
Mhm.
um, and so then once your nervous system begins to feel more rested, ideally, then that's where you kind of, in a sense, you could sort of surgically go in and really do a bit of a inner inventory. What's present? Like, emotionally, in my mind, what am I holding in my body as trauma or as like a lived experience that's asking for attention? And there are different ways in yoga nidra to address those, the emotional health and then mindset. And then really looking also at, and this is kind of the core of meditation teaching, like this self that I'm organizing self and world around. Like, is this really as solid and believable as I take it to be? And so I think that there's something really neat about that liminal state because you're bringing your body, your mind's aware, but your body's deeply relaxed. And so we know that that's when, I mean, you can, that you fall asleep sometimes to learn something. That's where neuroplasticity happens. And so in yoga nidra, you're taking yourself into that liminal state. And this is we know, where neuroplasticity happens because we're learning something at this intersection of kind of letting go and inquiring. And then by the end of the practice, you're encountering joy, or at least inviting the possibility for it, and then circling back to your intention. Now that's a whole practice. However, I've kind of chunked it out into looking at nervous system practices individually, and then emotional health practices, mindset practices, spirituality practices, where you're really there to know, like, who am I? What is this existentially, spiritually, at a soul level? And so
Mm,
I'm right now kind of starting to articulate this more as non-sleep deep rest, which was coined. This is a term coined by Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's a neuroscientist at Stanford. And he uses non-sleep deep rest to refer to practices like yoga nidra that take where your body's motionless, but your mind's aware. And that
mm,
there's actually this dopamine release that happens when you do this is quite different from meditation. And
mm,
so that's the basic practice. It's guided. And so I can self-guide myself, but normally you just listen to a yoga nidra and then you kind of just dive in and see what happens. And I can say that in the different retreats I've taught, you can have people that uh, turn toward and encounter the younger aspect of themselves that they've split off from and begin to make allies with, or really work with an emotion that they hadn't realized was driving them, or just get some rest and really be able to sleep better. So it's one of those practices that kind of meets you where you are, and it's something you can do for 10 minutes a day, and I have protocols for that on YouTube, like an 8-minute practice, and it's something you can do for a half hour. You can just go in with no intention. Your intention is to be agendaless, or you can go in very pointedly, looking to heal some aspect of your experience, or just curious about who you are most essentially. So that's a
mm,
bit of an overview. And I've
yeah,
taught this in the
I'm not,
prisons, San Quentin State Prison for 2 years every week. The same protocol, same practice, very transformative.
that was like a mini masterclass. Um, I want to give you an opportunity just to sit for a moment after sharing that, and I'm going to ask the audience a question in a moment to give you an opportunity to rest. But and as you're resting, um, think about any question you have for me. Any question you have for me before we transition to a practice. And then for folks who are joining us right now, I'd love to invite you to come into the chat and just share what's coming up for you in regards to this conversation. Um, yeah, so if you feel moved, um, just come to the chat and share just what's coming up for you. It could be a word, it could be a sentence, uh, it could be, what brought you to this gathering, anything. And then we'll just sit with what's coming up for folks just for a moment. Um, this idea of commodified rest, navigating the liminal space, deep rest as a portal.
Love that.
Yeah, just take a moment to use the chat to metabolize what's present for you. And for you, Kelly, any question for me?
Yeah,
Um,
I do.
yeah.
Um, what do you know about collective rest that you've studied, learned, experienced over the last couple of years with your work at the Garrison Institute and beyond? Like, what do you know about collective rest or lack thereof, that you could help us learn, help me learn?
What do I know about collective rest? From a research perspective, and kind of a scholarly perspective, what I know is that um, in specific communities, uh, especially communities of color over the last decade or so, there's been an attempt to reclaim rest. And that reclamation is on some levels ancestral work for the lack of rest. that many of our forebears were subject to in regards to, let's say, in the African American tradition, the exploitation of free labor via slavery, that deep ancestral fatigue
Mhm.
leads this generation now to say no more. Joy, you know, jubilance, ecstasy, rest. In fact, that this part of what I'm saying is best exemplified for those of you interested in this kind of collective rest is best captured um, by Trisha Hershey's book, Rest as Resistance. Rest as Resistance. And it's a powerful, powerful manifesto of reclaiming your divine right to rest. Um, Especially as a person of color, but just as a person, period. Reclaiming your divine right to rest. So I know that there's been this powerful movement and momentum from a social and spiritual perspective, um, and then also like I forgot the colleague's name, but there's another book called Radiant
Tracy
Rest, another
Stanley.
one, yeah, another wonderful book
Mhm.
uh, in the same footsteps and pathway of Trisha, of inviting us to think about, how is rest a portal for spiritual, social, and emotional transformation. Um, so I know that there's been more conversations around a collective rest, and that collective rest is not just all of us taking a nap, or all of us at the same time, because I've seen that too. You know, I've seen Trisha Hershey's work around napping together, very big. You know, so collective rest as us having a nap together. And I've tried that as well with some of my communities, and it's
Mhm.
quite powerful. It's difficult too because some people are like, "Well, wait, what? We're gonna nap? This is a workshop. Was this on the agenda?" But so just the power of engaging in collective practices of rest, whether it be yoga nidra, naps, um, and then the science and the neuroscience. So there's another part of what I know is that when we don't give our bodies adequate sleep, especially our brain doesn't have ample time to engage in vital, vital, vital neurochemical processes that literally clear toxins from the brain. Um, so, for example, like this concept of neurosynaptic pruning. Like at night when you're sleeping, like your brain is like literally pruning the ends of these neurosynapses that are no longer firing. They're no longer firing because there's exhaustion, there's fatigue, there's stress, there's trauma. So if you don't have adequate opportunities to rest, to clear the gunk that's built up from those non-functional neural synapses, you create the condition for your brain to not be in its most optimal healthy environment. So from neuroscience perspective, we just know more about um, the neurochemical dynamics of lack of rest, and also the opposite of what rest can do in terms of increasing our sense of well-being, increase our sense of connection to oneness, to all. So there's as we started thinking about all the different forces that are at play causing suffering, and that the more we can find opportunities to rest, the more able we are to meet them, right?
Mhm.
And the last thing I'll say is, in regards to that, like if we're well rested and we're able to meet the world as is with a kind of a sense of robustness, they're not just polycrises, which has been a concept and a term that's been thrown around a lot over the last few months and year, like all these polycrises. They can also be poly opportunities because I took a nap and I'm ready. I'm ready to tackle these issues. I'm ready to be in robust conversation
Mhm.
with folks who might disagree with me. Part of what I know
Mm.
about collective rest.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I feel like it's a joy uh, to rest with others. It's in the retreats that I teach, it's hard to describe the feeling in the room when it's like, okay, roll out the mats, it's kindergarten again, and nobody any longer, sees all the things that we see 20, 30, 40, 50 years later. And here we are just, lying down with a blanket and a pillow and are being invited into deep rest together. And there's something I think that the nervous system really enjoys typically, when we can do that, together.
Mhm.
And I think like what you're saying is there's like this deep enjoyment that can come from it, and that can also happen in practicing it. It's kind of this, um yeah, just in anticipation of practicing it. It's like scheduling a pleasant event, in psychology, where it's like I'm scheduling rest, and I do think too, we have to schedule it, because, if we're not intentional with it, we won't do it in the moments we most need it. Um, it just won't come to us as an idea to do,
Mhm.
because things are feeling more stressful, and we don't see the potency of it in that moment. But once we do it regularly and are scheduling it, then we like seek it out. I know I seek it out. I know how good it is for me because of the experience again and again and again. And so it's like something I'm constantly seeking out and scheduling and looking forward to and appreciating having done. And it does build that loop of resilience
Yeah.
and capacity to meet the moment.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot coming up for me. I want to go into a practice. I'll just drop this as a just a little anecdote for now, but the shame that can come from rest. I think it's important to just to kind of name
Very
that
important.
that I've seen folks like approach like napping or not napping or looking at napping in the larger kind of context as lazy or as as an there's something else that I could be doing, and and so there's a little bit of shame that sometimes is associated with reclaiming rest, uh,
Hmm.
inviting rest, inviting slowing down.
Hmm.
Some of that shame is sometimes for some folks is connected to feeling like they don't deserve rest.
Yes.
So just wanted to name that. We can go into that a little later if it's
Right.
something that the community feels moved to go deeper in. But I'd love to invite you to just host, if possible, a practice for the community to experience some of the modalities, and then we'll just check in with the community and have a conversation with them.
Right. Yeah, I think we could do like a 5 or 10 minute practice somewhere in between there. Um, so wherever you are, and actually, because many of us are in our homes, we have the luxury of this, or even if you're in an office, get comfortable. So this could be just sort of leaning back in your chair, but this could also be you've just now lied upon the floor and put your legs up on a chair, or your legs up the wall, or you're just gonna suddenly lie down on the floor with no cushions at all. So that's an invitation here. to just get as comfortable as you can. And you can put a bolster underneath your knees. If you have nothing like this and you are only limited to the chair that you're sitting in, then that's absolutely fine too. Just lean back if you would, if there is a back. Or if you're sitting on a cushion, could you let yourself feel as absolutely held by that cushion as you've experienced? And we'll go into a practice. So if it feels comfortable for you, you can allow your eyes to close, your gaze to lower. Feel your shoulders. Just check and see, what kind of tension they may be holding, and you may even roll them up a little bit and then release them down. And as you release shoulders, shoulder blades down, can you feel your body like heavy as a weight into the surface that's supporting you, whether you're seated, whether you're lying down, whatever conglomeration of a posture you have? Could you allow the weight of your body to sink into the surface that's here holding you? Allow your breath to begin to slow. So this could be a gentle inhalation and then a long exhalation, inviting even a feeling of sinking, of weight, of earth into your experience, into the body as you exhale. Inhale coming naturally. Exhale, weight, earth, mass, release into the surface. So do this for several rounds of breath where the inhale is just there, happening naturally, and then the exhale is a little more extended, carrying possibly those additional qualities of weightedness, of earth, ground. Notice the experience in your body as you do this. And could you feel as if it's like the ground comes right up to support? The surface comes right up to support the exhale. As if you're this mass of a planet being held in space. Feel the holding, whatever that is for you in this moment. Whether a felt sense or a visualization. Continue following the breath in and out. And then on the inhale, begin to invite a sense of lightness, of spaciousness. So as you feel the inhale coming in, maybe chest, belly rises, expands. Feel that lightness. And then on the exhale, allowing feelings of heaviness, of weight. So you're surfing opposites in your experience, inhaling light, spacious, kind of like light as a feather. Exhaling weight, mass, earth, ground. The mind can't easily be on two objects at once. So just kind of let go of thinking here and just inhale lightness, exhale heaviness. It's as if there's nothing else in your experience to attend to but the breath and these sensations. Now, as you breathe in and out, sense both at once. lightness, spacious, and heavy weight. Just feeling both opposites at once. Drop thinking, just feel, felt sense in the body, breath coming and going. Sensing perhaps all the way out into the outline of your body and just an inch beyond. As you breathe in and out, sensing both of these opposites of sensation at once. And then just allow the breath to come and go naturally. No need to visualize anything, but check in and see what's the felt sense of the body. Is there anything, any place of tension that could be kind of released in this moment, is unnecessary? Considering this word rest, restfulness. Before we close, we'll just ask one question inwardly if it resonates. So, what do I know right now? What do I know to be true in this moment? The answer could be like a felt answer or inquiry, or it could be a thought or an image, memory. What do I know in this moment to be true in my experience? Feel just behind your eyes, your eyelids, and could you drop any tension or holding behind the eyes, the throat, palms of the hands, and feet. And gently allow your eyes to begin to reorient to your surroundings, wherever you are. And at your own pace, you can come back to our time together. Just
Yeah.
notice as you're coming back, what the signature experience is for you.
Hmm. I definitely almost took a nap there, uh,
Mm.
and surely needed.
Mm.
Um, thank you, thank you for that guidance, and for the remainder of our time, we really want to kind of spoil the community and spend some time with you with any questions that the community may have. Is there anything else on your end, Sister Kelly, that may have come up for you as you were facilitating, or in the meantime, anything coming up?
Just at the very end, when I was asking, and I love that idea of asking our own psyche and being, what's true in this moment as a lived experience. And just the thing that came to me is I know this is important. I'll speak for myself because I know it's important for me, and I mean, I really have a strong sense this is important for us as a larger collective.
Mhm.
I know this is important. I know this is important. I think I don't even know how important it is, but I know it's important.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And as you're thinking about whether to bring your voice in, here are some of the questions that came up in the chat. Can you talk about how rest is hydration to the body, soul, and Mother Earth? Um, another colleague is in a legal aid organization that provides free legal assistance to rural areas. And the question was around like the work is meaningful and powerful, but also demanding. What can deep rest look like as a collective at an organization? And so I'll just surface those two questions for now, and then I'll can wrestle with others. Anything coming up for you in regards to those?
Yeah, we'll take the organizational one first. Yeah, thanks for the work that you're doing. And yeah, this I'm actually involved in creating some programming for people who are doing a similar work to you uh, around the US. And um, yeah, how could an organization find slash take slash experience rest? I think again it comes back to this sort of time tested thing of scheduling it and then making it something that is palatable for everyone. And so this could be that it's scheduling, especially if you're in person, scheduling a walk that has no agenda, that is aimless in the best sense of the word. And in some of the meditation traditions, being aimless is a high achievement. And so, to really invite, like we're taking time here to do nothing together. And this could be also a walk and talk on the phone if that's where we're at with digital work. But the whole organization can get behind the idea of periods of time in which you're not required to perform, periods of time in which it's scheduled, and whether you schedule it for yourself or it's offered, that we know rest is important and we know it's forgotten, and we're kind of reclaiming it here together. And that typically requires like someone that's a team lead to say, yes, let's try this. It doesn't usually happen when there's one cheerleader for rest and there's no buy-in. So it's really helping the people there see the case for it. And I think that's where you can bring some of the research in that, we know that dopamine is related to creativity. And, we know in practices like yoga nidra, dopamine is released because there is something like this motionless yet aware. But you can also do practices where you're moving but quiet in your mind. And so you're really aimlessly walking together, and that we have no outcome. We have no agenda for an outcome. I mean, we actually don't, by the end of this walk, need to have been creative even. And I did this with my team at Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, and we measured, I mean, we were so much more productive by taking these chunks, 2 to 3 hours a week together to do nothing. So I know it's possible, and then you'll find from within the team itself what the form of rest is. I do recommend non-sleep deep rest because I know that there's some solid evidence behind it, but also you can just do whatever form is going to be working for the folks that you're with, especially if it's a fast-paced, urgent, rapidly shifting environment. you want to do something that's going to be down regulating your nervous system. So I hope that helps. And in terms of the hydration, I feel that the answer was in the question there. Yes, the answer is yes. And I'm imagining whoever wrote that could be much more articulate about what that means than I can. But I do feel the truth of that, that rest is a hydration for us, for the earth, for um we get very brittle when we think we need to be someone all the time.
Yeah. Wanted to again invite anyone in the audience who wants to share a question, invite your voice in. Feel free to raise your hand if you want to share a question or a comment. So I'll give you some time to raise your hand. Feel free to raise your hand. And as folks are kind of orienting around the possibilities of sharing, I'm struck by another kind of rest that I think we embodied through this dialogue, that as we began with that context around where we are as a society in terms of those things that are challenging us, and there are more, but I think that there are ways in which we hold each other and we hold experiences that are restful. I like just being in dialogue with you, with the awareness that, as I mentioned, it is December. We're kind of running against, trying to finish the quarter. There's all this stuff happening in the world, and we know that, but we also give that rest. We put those things just at arm's length to be with each other and to talk at a different clip about rest, obviously. So I'm just struck by the ways in which we could also experience a sense of relief and rest by how we hold each other and our organizations with a sense of pace that does both acknowledge the challenging circumstances, but also takes ownership and agency over the tempo that we want to kind of engage in.
Yes. I love that so much. And I do love that about all the conversations that we've had, Angel, of just and I feel this from you, that there's been an invitation to rest in the midst of the dialogue and to be thoughtful and to not have it figured out and to not have the perfect, soundbite of information that's gonna solve the most pressing problems. That none of us have this sorted out, and that we're learning together in a way. And I think that there's something about the way that you hold dialogue and conversations that invites that, where it's almost like we are on this porch swing. It's just unfolding conversation, and but it's also, there are people here that are also in the conversation, and it's okay to model and experience this, without having hit all the points you think you need to hit, or said something in a certain way. It's just the lived truth comes out moment to moment. It's messy, it's not correct in some ways, it's sideways, it's helpful, it's unhelpful. And it's nice to just have this conversation with everyone with that kind of permission. And I'd say, I will absolutely credit you with that and say I'm joining in on it. Yeah. We
Yeah.
need your voice. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Really nice to see you. Nice to have you here.
Yeah.
And Fernando asked a question around this idea of a felt sense, and what is it about this kind? What is it about this that we're losing like a kind of felt sense in the modern, fast-paced, overthinking world, and how can that felt sense guide us moment to moment and over our lifespan?
hmm Yeah, I mean, I like to think that the felt sense is evolving over time, where perhaps, you know, uh, before it was more kind of like moving from intuition without logic and reason, and then comes through, and here we have the parade of logic and reason as being the highest form of knowing, and now there's an evolution in what the felt sense is, and yeah, have we lost sight of it? I think some cultures, parts of our culture have, yeah. And I think that it's just coming to me now that it's evolving, and that it's now informed by these a variety of forms of knowing, that can help us be clearer about the felt sense and how to direct it and listen to it, move from it, but also be tempered um, with other forms of knowing. And uh, some people feel so disconnected. It's like, what is that? So, and there are different ways of knowing. So some people don't have a wiring that's very connected to the body as a way of knowing. So that's okay too. But in general, yeah, the articulation of the felt sense is coming out more and more as something important. I studied with John Prendergast, who has done a lot of work on the felt sense, and I think it was maybe Eugene Genlin that's coined the phrase, but it's just a phrase, and it was around before that. um, and it's just another way of knowing. And my quick 2 cents on this is that I do think that it's a really neat dance of starting to kind of tune into your own intuition and body knowing, live and act from that, and then check and then get the feedback from the world, right? And then reorient. And then you've learned something new. I had a mentor that said, you just go straight until you hit a wall and you go left or right. And then you go left, and then you hit a wall and you go left or right. It's just like we're all sorting this out. And but I think that we do learn to trust the felt sense more and more over time when we're able to kind of corroborate our decision making with the world around us. And so I think it's a really important form of knowing that's under appreciated, and something that I would love to be a part of helping people find easy ways to connect with their felt sense and to trust it again, because those gut instincts are very trustworthy. It's the fear and some of the other emotions that can cloud it and cause us not to trust ourselves, and many other things. But kind of reclaiming that, I think, is part of the rest, because then we are invited to actually feel what's here in our bodies, and that can be uncomfortable for many. So there are also ways to do that that are kind. I hope that helps as a response.
Yeah, so I want to begin to kind of start to transition the conversation, and begin to wrap up. I'm struck by sometimes just the conversation around rest. I'm not sure if the word truism is appropriate here, but just like we need rest. It's a fact. But I think that precisely because of where we are as a society, where we're moving at a faster clip, um, and our technologies are moving at a specific rate. Our geopolitics are evolving in a specific pace, and we still have the same hardware that 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 allowed us to evolve as a species for hundreds of thousands of years, to adapt to a very different set of environment of circumstances. So I'm just struck by a couple things here. Like for example, like the phenomenon of compassion training. If you've seen closely, like there's been these wonderful approaches to cultivating our compassion and training our compassion. And if you slow down a little bit and think about it, like we have to be trained to be wait, you have to be trained to be compassionate, to be kind. That says more about the context in which we're in. The same, I think, goes for this conversation around rest. That this conversation says more about the context and the speed and the pace and the culture within which we're in. Um, and all the more reason to have, you know, trainings and practices and like non-sleep rest practices and other practices. So just wanted to make that observation that sometimes, you know, it's almost like shocking how obvious this stuff is, but it's not just that they're obvious, is that we're enveloped in this evolutionary moment that is putting pressure on us to work harder than ever before, and that leads to colder hearts. You know, it leads to more exhaustion where you would need to go through some kind of compassion training. You would need to schedule your rest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think so. In that sense, it's disruptive in a good way, you know, these practices. Yeah, it's saying let's do this differently. And totally ironic that there's a need for it. Um and doing it is disrupting ways of thinking and being that yeah, have been prioritized. And so yeah, it is in that sense, I agree. It's this reclaiming what you were talking about earlier, like the reclaiming of rest as kind of like as the birthright thing here. This is something we do naturally as organisms when given the chance. You know, we get activated, we rest. We get activated, we rest. We get activated, we rest. We don't get activated, and then you know, Netflix and chill. Our nervous system is actually designed to, you know, get activated, rest. So stress natural, rest natural. And we're just kind of like have to help it come back into balance, just like we're helping ourselves be compassionate when a nervous system at rest would naturally be compassionate, you know, one would think.
Yeah.
So they're related.
Yeah, and it seems like in many examples, rich inquiry begets rich inquiry. So there are so many questions that are coming in around human evolution and adapting to the pace of technology. So what's coming up for me there is that we need to do this again. The part two. Maybe next time we'll take a nap together. Uh,
I
any
would love that.
last thoughts, Kelly?
Mm. I'm just really appreciative to be here in conversation with you and with I'm really appreciative of everyone that showed up in this moment and is attentive to these things and I do want to come back to Now's share about yeah what happens if we're just there isn't a problem to solve right now. And I think that that is one thing, you know, that could be like a takeaway for us that despite the many problems to solve, so not in gaslighting of the problems that are there to solve, but what if in this moment, I could actually rest without that sort of urge that's there, that's driving a stress response, and that could I feel into the truth of, at a more fundamental way, this this moment, no problem to solve. What does it do to my nervous system to rest in that way, just in the, not exact same way, but the way like a zebra is just, sort of grazing, not trying to solve the problem of the next, predator that's coming by. So how can we find the truth of that in our own being, and and let it be true, like actually let it, like we to actually let it be true takes a lot. So yes, an inquiry maybe to make that I leave us with, but really appreciate everyone who shared, and great to see everyone here.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you so much, Kelly. I want to, on behalf of the entire Garrison Institute staff and the community, just appreciate you and the work you're doing in the world. To continue on. You'll be our patron saint of rest.
Wonderful, and back at you. It's just wonderful to be here with you.
And to the community that is here and watching, um, we at the Garrison Institute are celebrating our 20th anniversary, and as a nonprofit organization, we depend on the support of our funders and of our community. And this is I usually don't do this just because I think the work speaks for itself. But I think now more than ever, we need institutions like the Garrison Institute to be healthy, to be abundant, to experience surplus. So I want to invite all of you to think about donating. I want to invite all of you to think about people in your network who may have some additional resources and want to enact their values by contributing to an organization that has been doing the work for 2 decades. So yeah, let's ensure that this space, both digital and physical, continues to thrive for another 20. With that being said, thank you all so much. I send you all my regards. Happy holidays, and I hope you can sneak in a nap soon. You all take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, take care. Such a privilege.